All right, so today we're going to be talking about inheriting a project. Last week we talked about how to start a project when it was your template, you're the architect or engineer of record, and today we're going to pick up the topic again and talk about how to kick off a project when you're inheriting a project from somebody else. So let's take a look at some of the issues that we run into. So we're starting a new project. We are the architect or engineer of record, but this project model was started by some other company using their template, and it's some varying story structure, whatever it was, doesn't really matter. It's already begun, and maybe they did some of the design on it. Maybe they were working on a project, they got unhired or fired, as they say, and you're the new individual who's going to be signing the documents and taking over design and construction documentation. But here's the biggest problem: these next two areas. View names and most of the project settings and probably all the content will not match your current company standards. You're going to have probably some issues with some of the links, some general visibility, view templates, view names, different types of tags, content like that. So how do we go about the process of taking this project over and making it conform to your standards so that you can work on it, your team doesn't have to struggle with what's going on in those projects, and you can really kick it off and shine as the architect or new engineer of record? So we're going to take a look at a couple of tools and some of the processes that you're going to use. Now, throughout this presentation, I'm going to refer to last Thursday's presentation, part 1 of this. There will be a link to it down below in the description. So when this gets uploaded to YouTube, definitely take a look at that link, and you'll be able to see some of the previous things. I'm not going to repeat all of it today, because a lot of the processes, some of the processes are the same. The parts that are different, however, we're going to take and use a traditional received model starting practice, which is to open the model or models detached and save as new central files. We're going to use transfer project standards. Those are out-of-the-box tools. We don't have any custom tools ourselves for this. We're going to leverage those tools, and I'll show you a couple of things you might want to take some notes on for interesting components that you need to make sure you bring across. And then depending on your discipline, there might be a few others as well. Then what I'm going to do is dig into a couple of our tools that will help you with some of the extra processes, like Batch Family Loader. I'll show you an example of how you can take and import some of the standard content that you would use on a regular basis that would not necessarily come across using the Transfer Project Standards tools up here at the top. Also, we're going to take a look at Import Link Manager. We're going to take a look at it in two different aspects. First of all, repathing a number of links from wherever this model came from in the first place. Whoever the previous architect or engineer was probably had different network paths than you did. Their directory structures might have been different. And so I'm going to show you a quick way, without even opening the project after, of course, it's been opened and detached and saved as essential, how you can relink all of those models very quickly, and the next time somebody opens up that project, it's immediately done. Next, what I'm going to do is talk about Spreadsheet Link. I like to use Spreadsheet Link in a lot of our presentations. It's a very well-rounded tool, and it really helps you in a lot of spots. Now, specifically, I'm going to investigate some settings for some current views, just to kind of look at what's going on. This is kind of a part of my process generally when I open up projects that I'm receiving from somebody else. And also, I'm going to leverage this to do some light renaming of existing views if you wanted to retain the views that were already generated by the previous designer, whoever that was. Then what I'm going to do is step into Project Cleaner, a tool that we haven't talked a lot about recently, but I'm going to use this to strip working views from the project. You oftentimes get a lot of junk when you take a project over. And possibly I might even delete all the views depending on how developed the project was and create for myself basically a blank slate of a model that has just the modeled portions and no actual views. And then I might use View Creator a little later on to actually generate the views that I need. So I might be able to skip some of this Spreadsheet Link renaming portion over here if I don't need some of those views. But I'm also going to use Project Cleaner in this case after having transferred my project standards to swap and remove previous text types. And I'll show you some examples of how that might work. Then we'll talk about a little bit about View Creator. I'm just going to talk about it though, because for the most part, it's the same as that information that we're talking about from part 1, and we'll also touch quickly on BIM list, which again, those two tools came from the part 1 aspect, and so I might not really touch on that too deeply. Renaming of existing views and actually setting up the titles on sheet we talked about in part 1 as well. So I'm not going to cover that with the Spreadsheet Link exclusively today. But I'll talk about the full process and take you through it using some of our tools and some of the traditional out-of-the-box tools. So with that, let me jump over into Revit real quick here, and we're going to start this process off. So again, the first step when you receive a model is to run open, detached, and then save as central. And I would usually do this for all of my projects, but I'm going to go ahead and use the process here of open. I'm going to browse to where this is. I'm on my project takeover folder here, and I've got the architectural model right here. I've got an old little sample project I was playing around with the other day. I'm going to delete that real quick here. This is the architecture model that I'm going to be working with today. Again, as I mentioned in the previous presentation of part 1, I'm using the architecturals as my examples, but these processes work the same for all disciplines. So don't just tune me out when I say the word architecture, please. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the architecture model. You notice I don't have the ability to create a new local, and that's because this model was saved from a different path recently, and I have copied it to my project directory where I want this to start out. So I'm going to detach it. Probably since I'm receiving this from somebody else, I'd want to click the audit button as well, though for sake of time today, since I'm in a demonstration, I'm not going to do this just because it takes a couple seconds longer and I want this to open up as quickly as possible. So normally I would click that audit button when I receive models from outside companies just to make sure it's as clean as possible. Also, that's important if you're upgrading models, so that it doesn't, so that it actually audits the families that exist inside as well. That can help to reduce a few of the problems you might have on upgrading models. Once this project opens up, my next step here is going to be to run a save. I'm not going to do anything in the project until I save it. Now I'm going to steal this name here, and I'm going to keep this project, the original one as it is, as a record. I'm not going to overwrite it just yet. I might want to go back to that later. Maybe I put it in an archive folder or something. For my purposes here, I'm just going to put a -2 after this, and this is going to be the project that I'll be working with throughout today's presentation. I like to go into options, make sure I have whatever backup set I want, and maybe regenerate my active views. I also like to specify while I'm opening up projects which works that I'm opening up. So this is a good time to change that setting right here when you're saving this file, when you're taking it over. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. So this will save and lock down my active project. So what I'm going to do at this point is close this project down. Now I could go and do my next step of modifying some of my well, actually, you know what? I'm going to wait on this for a second. I'm going to do my transfer project standards since I'm here, and then I'll do my next step in a moment. I was going to actually go ahead and do my my repathing of my links right now, but I'm going to use one of our tools to do that instead of doing it manually in the insert and manage links, because manage links takes too long in my opinion. So I'm going to do it my way. I'll show you what that is in just a moment. First, though, I'm going to go ahead and do transfer project standards. To do transfer project standards, I'm going to open up one of my traditional templates that I would normally use. So in my Revit workflows here, I have a template file that I like to play with. So I'm going to go ahead and use this template file right here. I'm going to open it detached just so I don't accidentally change anything inside of it. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. I'll detach and preserve its work sets. And I'm going to use this as the template from which I'll be transferring my standards into my new assumed project. So I'm going to tab over to, whoops, not tab over. What am I doing? Control tab over, not Alt tab. Hit the wrong keyboard key there. So I'm going to Control tab over to my project, and I'm going to go ahead and use Manage Transfer Project Standards. And there's a lot of standards that need to get transferred across, and I'll point out what they are here. So I've only got one project opened up besides my active project here. It's unnamed because I opened it detached, so it just shows up here as no title. Had I saved it, it would have had a title. But there's no need for that because I'm just going to shut it down when I'm done with this process, so I'm not going to actually save it. I'm going to hit check none. And I do, by the way, the open detached just in case somebody happens to go directly to transfer project standards and transfers into this unnamed project settings from the wrong file. I don't want them to accidentally save over my company standard template if they have the ability to save if they weren't paying attention. So I like to make the practice a detached process there so that I can guarantee they're not going to accidentally save on top of my traditional template that I want to use regularly. So I've hit check none here, and I'm going to go through the process of turning on anything that I find to be meaningful that I would use in a daily process. So I'm going to go ahead and do things like browser organization. Now, depending on your discipline, if you were electrical, you might go through and change, bring in some of the cable tray settings or the electrical loads. Or if I'm mechanical, I might bring in some of my mechanical settings and so on. In this case, I'm focusing more on just the core features of Revit, and depending on what discipline you're in, architecture, structure, whatever, you're going to have different needs for things that you want to bring in. But I'm going to point out the ones that are specific to just Revit as a whole, as a core. And you can figure out which ones you want for your discipline-specific settings here. So browser organization is one that I like to bring across. As I scroll down my list here, there's going to be a few others that I want to bring in. Things like dimension styles. I find those to be important, and I want to definitely have my standard dimension styles available to me. Definitely want to bring across my filters. Those are important because it's going to help control a lot of my view configurations and sometimes selection options that I might have. Especially in the world of MEP, filters are incredibly critical there, so you definitely want to make sure you bring those across. Scrolling down here, if you are a keynoting individual and you like to use keynoting in your company, you probably want to bring across your keynoting settings. I'm not going to bring those across in this case, but I am going to bring across things like my line styles and my line weights that I like to use. Those are important for just making sure my detailing and general line weights across the board are pretty well ready to go. I also like to bring across all my object styles. I find that to be really important. Continuing down, depending on what the project settings are, I might not need to bring across the phase settings because those may already be configured in this particular project. Though, if you've got some super custom things that you do for phasing and you need those for whatever reason, like maybe you have legend views that are in an very early phase and they get demoed, you might want to bring across your phase settings and deal with the fallout of how that affects your project later on. In my case, I'm not going to go ahead and do that. Continuing down my list here, project parameters are important. I'm not going to bring across the project information because the information from my template project is different than the information in this project most likely. So what I'm going to do is bring across the parameters that I need. That'll give me any extra parameters that didn't already exist that will support things like my title blocks and other workflows that I have set up. So I'm going to bring across those project parameters. Continuing down here, depending on what your revision settings are, you may want to bring across your revision settings. Scrolling down a little bit further here, looking at a few more things. Text types, that's important. You know, definitely for your documentation, you want your text types. I definitely want my view templates. That I find to be really important. I like my viewport types. Those have my type of title markers below them. It saves me from redefining those all over again. And pretty much, well, maybe I'll bring across my work sharing display settings. If you have some custom work sharing display settings as well, you can bring those across. That'll just save you some extra time. So I've gone through and checked a number of things that I need to bring across, and I'm going to go ahead and tell it to go ahead and bring it in. So I'm going to click OK. And again, you may have certain ones that you like to bring in. That's perfectly fine. Just make sure you get the core ones that are incredibly important for your workflows and where you've got settings. Now, as I'm bringing this across, of course, there's going to be some duplication here. There's going to be some, duplicate dimension styles and certainly some duplicate line styles, possibly a few materials in the list here, and a number of other things as well. So what I'm going to do is certainly overwrite whatever I already have in this project. I don't know what the previous designer had set up here. I want to make sure that my standards are the one that I'm using. So I'm going to go ahead and overwrite everything as it brings it in and let it go ahead and bring all those settings across. Now, once this process is done, it should have brought across any of the system families that I need. If I was in the world of architecture, for example, I might have checked walls, stairs, and railings, depending on what default types I needed there. If I'm in electrical, I might have brought across things like wire types and other things like that. But it doesn't bring across everything. There's a lot of annotation types that it does not bring across. So in that case, what I'm going to do is use my first Revit Express tool up here. Up at the top, go ahead and use my Revit Express tools. I would use a tool like Batch Family Loader, and I might have a little list next to my desk here when I take over a project of critical annotation symbols and other component families that I need to load in. So I might go here to Batch Family Loader. What I'm going to do here real quick before I can use this, I'm actually going to take this project, save and close it, because I'm going to have to choose this project as a file to load these into. So I would normally want to just save and close this thing. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and add a host project to my list here. So I would browse out to where my model happens to be saved. So that's on my D drive in my case, in my desktop content. I've got a workflows folder here that I use regularly. So if you guys have any questions about previous workflows, I keep data sets handy if you want to take a look at some of those and play with them. Here's my project takeover folder that I'm working on today, and there's my project number 2, the file that I'm in right now. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. That's the project I want to load my content into. And I also have a bunch of families that I want to use. So depending on where you've got your library stored, you may want to go browse out and grab some of that content. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll just take a look at the annotations for today's purposes here. Maybe I've got things like, area tags, and maybe I should search in subfolders as well. So I can get some of my architectural content, like my door tags, since I'm dealing with architecture today. And maybe I've got some material tags. I don't know. There's a lot of things you could be bringing in here that you find important. Ceiling tags with elevations possibly even. right? You could go through and grab any of these components that you find meaningful, ultimately adding them to your list down below, and when you click OK, those will be loaded into your project. Now with the batch family loader, you've got some nice options here. You can tell it to load all families into this project, and in this case, because I'm doing a project takeover, I probably would want to make sure I did this option right here. Now this says it may greatly increase the file size. That's true if you use a lot of families. But if you use this only reload families that already exist, that could be a little bit of a problem because most of your families probably aren't going to exist. So you definitely want to make sure you load all your content. If there was by chance a name that was duplicated, like in the case of door tag, I'm just going to suppress the overwrite box and tell it just load it in using my new values from my tag. And if my project was not open like it is right now, I would just tell it to automatically save, and I would also tell it to close any opened host files. So right now it's going to go ahead and shut down my host file, load in some of this content, and then save it when it's all done. So I'm going to go ahead and hit load families here. And it's going through the process of loading them in, saving my host file right now. You can see down here at the bottom left corner it's running my save on my current project. It's not necessarily relinquishing control of anything, it's just saving it. And I'm going to click OK here. So it's telling me that loaded in those individual pieces of content. So I'll shut this down and make sure that that's closed. All right, now this is my default starter project in the background here. This is fine. I'm going to leave this open since I had to start up a project anyway for my next step. My next step was to use the import link manager to go through and modify some of my links. Now, I'm going to use it twice, once to repath, and then when I open up the project, I'm going to go ahead and use it to double check some of the settings on those links beyond what I can see in that pathing environment here. So when I click on this, I'm going to go ahead and use the load unload feature here. It brings up a secondary window. That's this little button right there, load unload files. I'm going to open up a project, specifically my architectural 2015-2 file here. And what it'll do is show me everything that's linked in there, anything that has a path associated to it, like the Revit keynotes file and uniformat classifications. I can repath those as well. Specifically here, though, I want to repath the structural, mechanical, and electrical files, but I don't want to sit here and wait for them to reload like I would normally in the out-of-the-box Autodesk environment. So what I'm going to do is use the load from option. Right now it happens to be unloaded as well because I couldn't find it when I was probably opening up that file detached. So I'm going to do load from, and I'm going to go ahead and choose my structural model. Click OK. Now this happens to be a relative path. I can switch between relative path and absolute paths if I want to as well right from here. So I can force it to be relative or absolute depending on my directory structure. I'm going to load my next one, which is mechanical from, reload my mechanical from that wherever it was located, which is right next to it, and my electrical as well. Reload from, grab my electrical file here. So I've got the structural, mechanical, electrical all ready to go, and I'm going to go ahead and apply this. Now notice as I was reloading those and choosing those paths, I wasn't having to wait for Revit to go through and parse those files and reload them from some location. I can just choose those paths very quickly, and sometimes when I'm receiving files from outside firms, there might be, 20, 30 links available here. Not all Revit models. Some of them are DWGs as well, but I can find all of those. And ultimately when I'm done, I can reload them, tell it to apply this, and it's going to tell me that the next time I open up that model, it's going to go ahead and modify those paths for me. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now it's time for me to go ahead and open up that model. Shut down this import link manager, shut down this junk project here, this template project that I'm not going to use anymore. And let's open my project takeover model here that I'm taking over that now has some repathed settings inside of it. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. It's going to ask me, because I've modified how it's been saved, which work sets I want to open. So here I could tell it not to open up these Revit links if I really wanted to. I'm going to let it open it up right now. So everything's going to be opened. Click OK. This model has become its central file in its current location. When you use that reload tool from the Revit Express tools, it modifies, it augments that central file just a little bit externally, and it makes you resave it when you open it the next time as a central file. So it's an important step to do before you start letting users into the model. So at this point, once this is fully opened up and it's saved, because it's actually running a save command right now, let's go take a look at the traditional out-of-the-box import links or manage links dialog. So right now you'll notice that instead of having the old path that was on the T drive from whoever had this before, this is now just a relative path, and it's saved relative to my project at this point, and all of these links are loaded and ready to work. I could have, by the way, also in that previous dialog box, modified them from overlays to attachments if I really needed to for some reason. I could have attached those links to my model. I rarely do that, but there's times when that becomes meaningful. All right, so I've got those links all done. I'm ready to go. So at this point, it's time for me to start taking a look at the next stage here, which is the view settings of my project. Now I have my project browser set up here, and since I transferred in my actual browser settings, I've got a few other ones that I could use. For example, I could use a standard, kind of configuration here, or I could use my views and types, or whatever one I wanted to use. Ultimately, when I've chosen the ones that I want to play with, I can delete the ones that I no longer need, like these 00s and 01s that were there from whoever had this model before. That was their setting defaults. So I could use like my standard settings right down here if I really needed to or wanted to. I'll leave it right as the way that it is right now, but I'm going to come back and modify that possibly later on if we have time. So beyond that, the next stage then would be to use something like Spreadsheet Link. So I can investigate the settings of whatever my current views are. I can see a list of my current views here, but I probably don't have a schedule of my views. Maybe I do. I don't know. Maybe there's actually a view schedule in this list here someplace. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's actually a view schedule. So I could make a view schedule, or I could use Spreadsheet Link to show me the view schedule in Excel and then have that externally so I can manipulate that and make changes to it or just see what those settings were in the past. Let's take a look at how I could do that. With the Revit Express tools here, I'm going to go use Spreadsheet Link at this point. So here's Spreadsheet Link popping up. Oh, you know what? I'm going to take one step back. There's one more thing that I want to do before I get into this. I want to take and look one more time at the Import Link Manager, because now that I'm in this project, I want to take a look at a few more settings available for these links. When I'm live in this project, one of the things I can do is I can take a look at some of the statuses, like is it pinned or not? Is it loaded? I've already checked those before. I can see what work set they happen to exist on. In this case, I'm noticing that none of these links are pinned in place, and I don't want any of my users accidentally moving them. Now, hopefully they're in the right place. I don't know for sure, but hopefully they are. What I want to do, though, is I want to take all three of these very quickly and pin them all. So right from this dialog interface, I can see if they are pinned, and if they're not, I can set them to be pinned. So when I close this down, they're now pinned. There's other settings that I could take a look at there. I could potentially do things like unloading if I really wanted to, or reloading and stuff like that. But I definitely like to use the Import Link Manager when I'm live in a project just to quickly check the work set to make sure that they're in the right work set, and I can also modify the work set right from there if I need to. And I can modify the pinned status of those links. It's not going to tell me if it's in the right spot, but I can change those two things very quickly. All right, let's get back into the Spreadsheet Link process here. So within the Spreadsheet Link, what I'm going to do is work with the views specifically at this point. Now, I did some of the view work last time in part 1 where I was modifying the title on sheet. And I could do that process as well, but before I even get there, I want to see where my starting point is. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my views, bring them across, and have it list all my views out here. And this is going to list all of my views. Now, I might care what kind of view type this happens to be. So I might actually go ahead and say, what is your view type? So it's going to tell me if it's a sheet view, if it's a working view, what type the actual individual placed on there. It's actually a parameter that they created called view type. That isn't telling me what the Revit type is. That's this type option right here. So if I add type to it, I can see, okay, well, it's a building elevation, it's a 3D view, it's a detail or a floor plan, whatever. And I can see how it's been organized within the project browser, or if it's been organized properly in the project browser based on their settings. Now, you'll notice one thing here. You'll notice that in some of the cases on view type, some of these are grayed out and some of them are not. And the reason why some are grayed out and some are not is because those that are grayed out are actually being set from a view template. You can't actually change this because one of their view templates that they've applied to it is locking that down. So what I want to do also probably is find out what view template is in use and see what's going on there. So they've got some weird oddities going on in this case. They've got some architectural elevations, and in some cases it's setting sheet views, and in some cases it's not. That's kind of weird. So I might want to, ask myself some questions about the validity of their model a little bit. Same thing holds true down here with the pre-3D views, how it's got presentation view in some cases but not in others, and how that's not locked down. So I might have to start questioning some of the accuracy of how they've got this set up. But also what I might want to know on each of these views is something like what the scale is. So maybe I go in there and just ask it for every single view what its scale happens to be. Where is scale? If I was scale, where would I be? View scale, there it is. Add that across. So I can start taking a look at what the view scales are, right? Makes it really easy to start asking the views questions and seeing what's available. I can also do things like sorting them by types of views and stuff like that. So let's go sort it by view type. So now I can go there and say, okay, all my floor plan views, they're all doing something specific. Why didn't it sort? Sort, descending, ascending. There we go. Oh, I'm using view type. I want to use type. There we go. That's better. I was using the view type from the individual who originally set this up, and I wanted to use type, the one that's provided by Autodesk. So now I have all my types of views grouped together the way that I would expect to see them. So I can see all my floor plans really quickly and what they are. And I might want to show things like what their view names happen to be. So let's go there real quick and show view names. Right, so it's just the whole point here is that you can go through and really pick up whatever is important to you. View name, there it is. And actually the view names that they've got are rather generic. It just says, you know, level this, view name, basic names out there. So if I want to take all my floor plan views and rename them a little bit based on what types of views they are, like architectural plans versus reflective ceiling plans, you know, I could modify those names a little bit. In fact, I've got a preset configuration, so you don't have to watch me build this back up again from scratch. I'm going to go ahead and load my settings from a file. For my views. It's going to replace everything that I've got over here. So I've investigated what the views are. I'm going to reset all of this and basically take my view renaming tool. Now, by the way, this view renaming, you can make this as advanced as you'd like, and you can leverage this downstream in a project as well. When users have gotten their hands on a project and maybe they've gone through and renamed views in ways that you don't really want them to have renamed views, you can go through and re-standardize things. Now, this particular view renaming tool that I've kind of put together for Spreadsheet Link is only for floor plans and reflected ceiling plans. So it's not going to take and modify gross building area plans and things like that. This is just for floor plans and RCPs. But what I have done is modified every one of those names now. The view name is going to get modified because there's actually a formula up here that asks it some questions. And it basically says if the associated level is one of these 5 different or 6 different types of views right here, basement level 1, 2, 3, 4, or roof level, it prefixes it with the proper setting over here, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, all the way to RO. And then it uses the view template over here to tell me what the view template setting is. So down in the architectural plans, it's going to put architectural plan in the name, reflective ceiling plan for the reflective ceiling plans in the name. It uses the view template name directly. Now, if you were using something like view creator and there was a view template abbreviation associated to these, you could use that in place of the actual view template name later on, especially later on when you've actually got view templates assigned to your views. So you could definitely leverage that if you needed to in the future. This one right here was just a simplistic example taking over a project from an architect. So I've got at least my level names on here. In this case, there's a lot of no view templates. If there was something else from them that I might want to use, like the view types, maybe I want to go through there and actually use a view type in this mix. So I can go ahead and say, oh, well, give me the view type. That was one that they had given me from their views. So I've got things like don't touch, sheet views, right? I could take those different views as needed and actually have my my view name be prefixed with part of that view type name if I wanted to save that in some form. But in that it's so inconsistent, I don't necessarily want to leverage that. So I'll probably skip that in my settings here. I could apply this back to my project right now if I wanted to. I could say apply active worksheet to my project, and it'll go through. Oh, hang on, let me pull this to the side real quick first. You can actually see all my view names over here right now for a lot of my floor plans. If I apply the active worksheet back to my project, I'll go ahead and answer yes to this. It's asking if I want to rename corresponding levels and views. In some cases, there might be some need to have unique names in the mix here, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel out a few of those. So it did update 21 object. There was a couple of errors because there were some duplicates out there. No big deal there. If I close this out, not sure exactly where I might see those because there's quite a few errors, obviously. A lot of those don't touches didn't get renamed. Might be some issues. Anyway, it is a technique that you could possibly use to go through and rename some of your views, provided that your rules were extensive enough to truly provide unique names for different types of floor plan views. All right. Now, what I personally like to do in a lot of cases, instead of me going through and renaming their views and trying to figure out what they're doing, if they don't have a lot of construction documentation going on, so if I go here into like my sheet views and I look at a first floor plan sheet view, they've got some tags out there, some room tags, they've got some door tags. That's about it. There's not a lot of actual documentation that I really need to worry about. I can re-tag things pretty quickly using a tag all in a view. And so what I might, and probably their tags are even wrong in the first place. So what I might do is I might actually go through this entire project and just strip all their views out that I don't need. Now I could do it through the project browser, especially a lot of their 3D views. A lot of the 3D views are probably just designing views that I don't care about. Let's go take a look at how that might work. So if I go back again to my Revit Express tools, we've got a tool here that's called Project Cleaner. It's one of our free tools on the BIM Manager Suite. Project Cleaner lets me go through and organize my views in a number of different ways. So if I go here into options, I can choose my view organization by view type, by discipline and type, by type and discipline, whatever you need here pretty much. In this case, one of the ones that I like a lot is to find out views that happen to be on sheets already and then organize them by type. And then within the sheets themselves, on my Sheets tab over here, if there are sheets, I can show them how they're configured as well, like maybe the prefix of the sheet, or just show them all, or what the issue date happened to have been. So you can go through and show them in different ways as well. Same thing with the links tab. You can actually organize those a little bit. So I can show only Revit links or show CAD and DWF links as well. I like showing the CAD specifically because it helps me find things like imported objects in my project in some cases, and I can get rid of them. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Actually, no, sorry, it's only links. So it's not going to show me imports at all. It's just links. But here in the views now, if I expand out views, one of the nice things is it'll tell me views that are on sheets, and it'll specifically tell me if they're on a specific sheet, what sheet it's on, the actual sheet number. It'll do the same thing for schedules down here. It'll show me all the schedules that exist in this list. And I can go through the process of getting rid of anything I don't find meaningful. So I can just go through, and start grabbing a bunch of objects here. Oh, let's get rid of all these objects. They don't mean anything to me. The rest of them, maybe they do. Maybe they are meaningful. Maybe some of them are not. Maybe they're just junk stuff, and I know that I'm only bringing across the room schedule when I did my transfer project standards, if I transferred any views specifically across, if I brought them in. Or if I'm using something like BIM list and I've got my schedules all pre-configured inside of BIM list, maybe I just nuke all of their schedules and I just bring all my schedules in. So I don't have to worry about having any of their junk schedules. That probably won't work with my parameters in the future. So I can get rid of that pretty quickly just by checking and unchecking the schedules list. As far as the views go, for the most part, well, for our part here, none of it's on a sheet. So I'm going to go through and get rid of everything that I don't care to have. I'm going to get rid of 3D views, area plans, ceiling plans. I'm going to keep the drafting view because it happens to be the exit view, so I'll keep that one view. I'll keep the main 4 elevations, but I'm going to get rid of all the floor plans. They don't look like they have a site plan inside of here, so I'm just going to get rid of everything. So I can nuke it all very quickly by me just going through and in the Project Cleaner environment, looking at what views exist and starting to clean them up. So I can go ahead and remove all of those. So it's going to delete 99 views very quickly. So it's going to strip them all out. There's going to be no views over here. The only thing that's going to be left open is my project starting view, which is the one that pops up right now. It's the only view that was available to me. I can also go to sheets and clean up a number of the sheets. If they had just presentation-like sheets, I could strip those out very quickly. Saves a lot of time. And when you're going through and taking a project over from somebody else, if you have the ability to do this. Now, if the project is further along in development and they've got partial construction documents done, fantastic. Then don't use this tool for this purpose here. Maybe you just delete the working views that aren't on sheets and you leave the stuff that is on sheets alone, and you have to go through a bit more cleanup there. But this can certainly help you if you're early enough in that takeover process to just get rid of everything if it's faster for you to go through and just redocument some of that stuff, especially when it's just tags. Okay, so I've cleaned up a lot of views over here. Then what I would do is use the View Creator process. Now I'm not going to go through this too extensively because we've talked about this already. We've gone through the exercise in the part 1 of actually building a number of floor plan views. But what I'll do here is just kind of set up some basic abbreviations for future users. So I'll get it ready for them since this project is a takeover. I'm just going to make sure that the appropriate abbreviations are set up inside of here. So anybody else who works on this, when they make their views based on my view templates that I've got set up over here, these got transferred in, by the way. These were transferred in with my transfer project standards earlier. I've already got my abbreviation set up on these, and I'm also going to go through and do stuff like making sure that if I needed, different abbreviations for the existing phase versus new construction, that I've got that set up. So now you can go through and you can very rapidly start generating a couple of new floor plans for your project. If you know you're going to need things like code plans and enlarged plans, maybe this is not an existing project at all, but I can do like general floor plans, working files, whatever you need. Make a couple finished plans for the new construction, add those, and just recreate your views. And I did that poorly because I had master after every single one of those because I left that for my last presentation. Fantastic. Created 36 views. Well, let's go through the exercise here using Project Cleaner and strip them out real quick. So Project Cleaner, take all my views that are not on sheets and grab all my floor plans that I just generated and remove those, all 36 views pretty quickly since I just made a mistake. And I'll go back to my view creator here and very quickly rebuild that real quick. So I'm going to grab all those views again. Let's clean out master this time so I don't have that happen again, and choose the ones that I need. Code plan, enlarged, finish, general, and presentation. Maybe the working as well. I don't know. Maybe I can skip the presentations. Add those down below, create the views. It'll rip through my project and very quickly build them up. So there's 30 views. I must have presentation checked last time. So close this down. I've got my new floor plan views ready to go. So my users can now start working, and I probably would want to modify my project browser organization as well so it's sorted out properly inside of there. But I just quickly went through the exercise of building those up. And if they also had perhaps, maybe some scope boxes inside of there, maybe I would go through the exercise of creating some dependent views also if that was important. But yeah, so I've got now my floor plans all organized out inside of here neatly so the end users can actually get into the mix and start like drawing and designing right away. I've got my general architectural floor plan here. There's no documentation out there, but it does have my view template applied, so it's going to be working however it is I need it to show up for my users. They can start the tagging process and very rapidly just use things like annotate, tag all, and grab all the rooms, grab all the doors, and they're back to where they were a little while ago. So pretty easy to reset that. And finally, the last step here again was using a tool like BIMlist. This project here has almost none of the content that I would normally use other than what I transferred in using the batch family loader. So instead of users having to constantly go out and load content and browsing for content in the library, which gets very frustrating, what I can do is let them use something like a BIMlist browser. And if I have my library set up properly for them, they should be able to find any content that they need and start leveraging that to bring content into their project. Apparently mine is a remote database and is doing an update right now. But they can go through the process of dragging content in as they need it, which makes that loading process much more streamlined and much easier during a project takeover. It was one other tool that I was thinking of showing off, and for whatever reason I'm not seeing it up here in the ribbon. I thought it was Project Cleaner. No, it's called Type Swapper. That's the one. I didn't actually have that in my PowerPoint there, but Type Swapper is another powerful tool that I wanted to show you guys. I went through and stripped out the vast majority of the documentation out of this project, so there isn't going to be a lot of text types inside of here. But if you were working on a project where you had to retain their views and retain their documentation, you could go through the process of taking things like text types and dimension styles that they've got, and you can swap them out. So you can see here that in my project I've got a 1/2 inch aerial, a 1/4 inch aerial, and an 1/8 inch aerial. Well, the 1/8 inch aerial that's used right now, I probably want to swap that out for my 1/8 inch aerial standard CTC. This is the one that I would use on a regular basis. So I want to make sure I make that change so I don't have some of their old documentation hanging out. And I have no idea what view this happens to be in. There's only one of them, but try and go and track down where that is. I can't purge this until it's not being used. So I can swap that out for the 1/8 inch aerial. I can also go through and take things like the 1/4 inch. I don't have any good 1/4 inch examples inside of here, but I could swap that out for one of my other CTC standard types inside of here, or maybe just leave it as it is and rename it to whatever I wanted it to be. So it's using a better text type or a better text name and using my standard settings, my width factors, and whatever the case may be. But you can go through the text types area here and certainly run that swap process. And once you're done, you can tell it to go ahead and swap. So it updated that one instance, and the next time I open up Type Swapper, the 1/8 inch aerial would not be used, and the 1/8 inch aerial standard CTC would be used. So that makes that process pretty easy to swap out text types project-wide. Same thing holds true for dimension styles. Now again, I deleted all their views. There's no dimensions actually in use. But what I would do is go through, actually there are a couple dimensions in use. Look at that, there's 3 of them someplace in my project somewhere. I have no idea where. But that linear 3/32, what I might want that to actually swap out for is one of my linear 1/8 inch standard CTCs. So I could swap that out for my linear 1/8 inch aerial standard CTC dimension and swap that. I don't have any idea where it is. In this case, oh, it's a part of a sketch. That's fantastic. So I can't swap that one out. I may have to go figure out where that happens to be. It might be inside of like a floor sketch or something. So we'll definitely take a look at that. But you know, at least you can figure out that you can't swap those out for some oddball reason. So there was a question that popped up, and it said, when views are created, did I create those, or was there an ability to assign a view template? So let me jump back into Revit here, and I'll talk about that view creator process again. And also, you might want to take a look at the part 1 of this presentation, because we talked a bit in depth about the actual view creator portion here. But what I'll do is kind of open up the view creator and take a look at these views again. So if I'm checking any one of these levels over here to create a view for it, when I get over to this middle segment where it says view templates, these are view templates that already exist in my project. In fact, if I close this down right now and go to view, view templates, and manage view templates, there's actually a ton of view templates. If I specifically filter this down to floor plans, you'll see there's that same list that I was seeing just a little bit ago. If I go to something like this floor plan presentation or floor plan working or whichever one of these that is I need, when I click on one of these, you'll notice that I've already pre-configured what is included and what is not included. There's already some settings as to, you know, what the model graphics happen to be and what the analytical graphics are and stuff like that, as well as scale. And down here at the very bottom, there's a view creator abbreviation that's associated with that. In this case, it's called presentation plan. So when I'm choosing floor plan dash presentation, presentation plan is what pops up. That's going to be the name portion that actually gets applied to my view. That's why over here, I've got a view. I don't have that one right now. If I go to general, for example, I called it out as general or floor plan. So it's actually called out as floor plan right there. So that's why when I created my 01 floor plan, if you look far to the right over here, it automatically applies the view template when I'm using that view creator. It applies the view template floor plan general, and part of that process, part of what's being applied by this, is this setting here of the view creator abbreviation. So any view that has floor plan general associated to it as a view template, it's going to get the abbreviation floor plan associated, and view creator is also going to use that as part of the naming convention. The nice thing here is that when I'm doing the spreadsheet link process later on, if somebody disassociates this for some reason and they manually change my name or whatever, even if they don't disassociate this, but they go through and manually change view names for whatever reason they felt like they wanted to do that, I can go back through and rename their views based on this setting right here if I need to. So you can definitely leverage that. One of the questions also that popped up was, can View Creator create new construction phased views with phase filters pre-applied? And the answer is absolutely, provided that you have within your view template configuration the phase filter, which is one of the settings, actually applied or included in the settings of that view. So in this case, I've got show previous and new. If I go to my demo floor plan up here, this view template, you'll notice that the phase filter is set to show previous and demo. And if I go to my existing, it says show new only. So that one absolutely. So when I go into here, there's another reason why I'm using View Creator. When you do the normal view creation process by creating a floor plan through here, create a plan view floor plan, you don't have the ability to choose what the phase is going to be. It always defaults to the latest phase in your project. So if you want it to be an existing view, you have to go through the process of setting existing view and setting a view template. It's kind of tedious. So what I do is I use the View Creator tool here, and again, this is talked about a lot in the part 1 as well. But if I go to the plans and ceilings and I create a level 1 existing floor plan view and I choose the existing view for that, when I create that view, it's going to, wait, I have to add that first. There we go. So there it goes. 01 existing floor plan exists. It's using all the different name parts from up above up here to create this floor plan. I'm going to go ahead and create that view. It creates one floor plan view for me. And let's go take a look at what it does. Now, the existing here had it set originally in the view template to show new. So let's go see if it actually did that. If I close this down and go take a look at my existing set here, it sorts it properly because this is sorted by phase. It groups it properly because it's a floor plan. It's put in my little subgroup here, existing, because that's what my view template is told to do. And then it actually has the right name. When I open up this view right here, if I open it up, we'll take a look. It says floor plan existing is the view template. As I scroll down, the phase is existing already, and the phase filter per my view template up here is grayed out and set to show new. So yes, View Creator will set your phase filters. It will set phase on views. It does name them per whatever standard it is you've got set up inside of there. So you can go through and very rapidly recreate or create from scratch views in your projects. Again, you might want to go back and take a look at part 1. It goes into a lot more depth even than I've talked about right here about View Creator. That was kind of the focus of part of that presentation. But certainly View Creator can be a very big benefit to you, both when you're starting projects, when you're taking them over, when you're bringing projects off shelves, and even when you're late in the project lifecycle and you're trying to get a number of views kind of finalized and configured. You can leverage View Creator and Spreadsheet Link in tandem to go through and really update a lot of those settings for yourself to make your life a lot easier. All right. Well, I've gone through the full scope of what I was hoping to talk about today. Hopefully this was meaningful for you. We definitely, as Scott mentioned earlier, we value your feedback. So certainly give us feedback in the survey that follows this presentation. Let us know future webinars you'd like, different workflows you'd like to see. I love putting together different workflows for you. So let us know what it is you're looking for, so you give me some direction so it becomes your presentation and not just me talking to you about ideas that I think are fun. So this one here, by the way, was actually one requested by our clients. So we do listen very carefully to your feedback.